We're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this next installment of the CQ Growth Lab. This is a subject that's near and dear to David and my hearts uh, when it comes to turning opportunities into the best possible outcomes and in process of becoming our patients' advocates. And I chose this picture for a reason because I really believe that a big part of what we do when it comes to patient care and advocating for our patients is, and I've always kind of looked at it this way, is we're trying to solve a puzzle. And sometimes when you have folks that are struggling with their hearing and their loved ones and friends and family around them, there are missing pieces to the puzzle for those folks that are causing them to be disconnected from each other. And ultimately, what we are trying to do in this process is to bring connection. And the reason this is such a this idea of advocating for patients is so near and dear to our hearts is because we have personal stories to share in that as patients, both David and I, in the process of our journey with our own hearing. And when David shared his story with me, I was kind of blown away. I honestly had no idea of how he came to become a patient himself. And I thought, gosh, you got to share this with the group because it just drives home the point of how important it is that we advocate for our patients. Because if we don't, sometimes the answer is who. Sometimes the question is who will. So, David, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to share your story. Introduce yourself, of course, and then share your story with the group because I think it just tees this topic up beautifully.
Yeah, I agree. Hi, Dom. Thanks for having me and hosting today, and welcome everybody. Glad you're here. I'm David White. I'm a hearing instrument specialist. I also work on the advanced workshop side, so that's what I do day to day. But when Dom and I were doing this, we were talking about the story of how did I become a patient. So I was 5 or 6 years into being a practitioner, and had the trust to be able to train a new practitioner. I had some downtime. So during that downtime, I said, hey, let's run through the process. So get to the testing procedure. We go in the booth and I come out and he hands me the audiogram and I said, that can't be right. Because it showed hearing loss at 2, 3, 4K at about 35, 40 dB and then rebounding to 6 and 8. And I go, what'd you do wrong? He goes, I've done it the same way I do it every other time. I go, well, this can't be right. And I was never his guinea pig. So
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, man, maybe we didn't set up that audiometer correctly today. So I'm blaming everything except what was really the root. So to the point of I took him down the
It can't be
hallway.
me. It can't be me.
It can't be me. So we took him down. I was only 41. So took him down the hallway to the other booth. And we all know what the result of that was too. It was the same. So that realization started to kick in of, okay, I have some hearing loss. So I started talking to some colleagues and some friends and family, and they all said the same thing. Yeah, not a big surprise. But nobody spoke up for me or to me. Nobody said, hey, you're struggling here. I didn't have that advocacy. And that's at that point is when I realized how important it is for me as a provider to advocate for those patients who, like myself, didn't have somebody to just step up and say, hey, you're struggling. You need to have it looked at. And if had they not done that test that day, I probably would have been 4 or 5 more years with hearing loss before I'd ever known it because I
Why do you
just
think it would
wouldn't
have
have the
taken you?
testing.
Why do you think it would have taken you so long?
I think it just it's we all know it's gradual. Things
Yeah.
happen slowly and the brain just acclimates to this is normal for me. Everything I counseled patients against and to watch for, I was subject to it myself. No different.
And do you think it would have taken your at that point girlfriend, but became your wife? Do you think it would have taken her a few more years to get aggravated enough to start saying something?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if I had been on a daily basis, living with somebody and engaging with that person every day, it may have been a bit quicker. But yeah, it probably would have been 3, 4 years after we got married, is my guess. Yeah. So
It's
that's the reason it's so important to be
and
that
it's
advocate.
Yeah, that the story you shared too about a trainee testing you, I've actually had a few customers that have had a similar experience. They've been providers for years and then they were training someone and they tested them and then that's how they found out they had a hearing loss because they were doing the same thing that their patients do in coping with it, writing it off. It's not me, it's this, it's the situation I'm in and all those kind of things. But in the end of all of that, I mean, imagine where you'd be today had you not made the decision to get help when you did at 41. I mean,
I was
what do
lucky
you
that I
think?
was a provider and had somebody to test because who knows what maybe irreversible damage may have been done.
Right,
Um,
right. And so, you know, that's why this is so near and dear to our hearts. And I love this quote by Brene Brown. I those of you who know me know I love Brene Brown's work. I've been into it for about 15 years. You know, she changed my life and my perspective on a lot of things. And if you have never heard of her, I highly recommend checking her out, listening to her TED Talks and her books. I can't say enough. They're research based. So in based on thousands of interviews and thousands of anecdotal studies and survey responses, and it's just incredibly insightful about the human psyche and the way we think. And I love this quote from her. We are hardwired to connect with others. We as people, we're hardwired for human connection. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. And without it, there is suffering. And you know, David told me before with this story with his colleagues, they even said to him, well, yeah, you do fine in the office where it's quiet, but when we go out into it, and you know, we go out after work sometimes to B-dubs for some wings and beers or whatever, we notice that you kind of disconnect. We notice that you just kind of are in your own world and you're not participating as much as you normally do. And that in and of itself says to me, that's disconnection. It was already starting there. Imagine how much worse it would have gotten over the course of time had you not gotten treatment. And maybe we don't always look at it this way, but that's human suffering. That disconnection is human suffering. And that's what we're trying to fix. And you know, I would go as far as to say this: when you think about the people that your patients want to connect with most, it's almost always going to be the people that they're closest with, their spouse, their adult children or grandchildren. It's almost always family or very close friends, as it was in David's story. And so the question for the group, and I'm going to ask everyone to use the chat here if you can, please. uh, who here prioritizes having a companion present at all appointments? So if you could please just type in the chat. And if some of you might say, you know, I definitely prioritize it for consults or for fittings or whatever. But if you could just kind of put in the chat where you're at. I'm sorry, we can't make it so that everyone can talk in these because it just becomes a little bit tough in these webinars. But if you could, please, who here prioritizes having a companion present at all appointments? Present for HAE, trial fit, and trial fit follow-up. All right, good. That's that's awesome. That's Julia. Good. Anybody else? So I love that answer from a standpoint of you have them present for the HAE, the trial fit, and the trial fitting follow-up. And then I'm going to ask this question: how do you effectively engage with the companion during the HAE trial fit and trial fit follow-up? How do you effectively engage with the companion? My bet is for most of you, it's about, first of all, bringing them into those appointments. I can't tell you how many times I've been in offices where I see the companion sitting in the waiting room during some of these appointments. So it'll be bringing them in for the appointment and then asking those questions. And I think some of the time for companion, you have to consider the fact where they're coming from. So every patient you ask the question, you're asking the companion too. And when we really put ourselves in the companion's shoes for a minute, it's so critical that they get to be understood and they get to be heard. Because when they're the ones that are with the prospective patient on a regular basis, do you think they're being heard? Do you think they're being understood? Well, we know if there's any kind of hearing loss, we know that there's going to be some definite misunderstanding. There's going to be some definite feeling of disconnection and not being heard. mean, and so, but the other part to this that I want everyone to think about is when I've heard it said too many times that having the companion there is important because it helps them make the decision. Is that the most important thing, though? Is that why having the companion there is so critical? I'm going to stand on a hill here and I'll die on this hill. I don't believe that's the reason why having a companion is important. I believe the reason having a companion there is so important is for long-term patient outcomes and success. And here's why I say that. If the companion is not present, I want y'all to think about this. If a companion is not present, do you think their expectations are realistic or unrealistic? If you think they're unrealistic, raise your hand. You can click the little raise your hand button. Help me out. If you think they're unrealistic. Oh, we got a bunch of them. I tend to agree with you guys. I think their expect you spent $6,000 on something, $7,000 on something. My expectation as a companion is up here. But the realistic expectations of what you can actually achieve with prescribed amplification is probably a little bit more like here. So what's going to happen when that person goes home if that companion wasn't part of this process and got an expectation that was here? What's going to happen once they get home? David, tell everyone what you've experienced with your
I
patients.
tell you,
What happens?
from a personal space, on my family side, such as you, we talked earlier, Dom, of just unrealistic testing happens. So they're at the dinner table and it's say, Thanksgiving's next week and somebody turns their head and whispers, pass me the gravy or pass me the potatoes.
And they do
Nobody
this stuff. I've
understood
seen
right?
it. I've seen it in my own life.
Yeah. And that's what happens. So that's why it's so important that not only do we have the companion, but we engage effectively with that companion throughout the process. And I agree with Julie, it's that every question that we ask the patient, we involve and ask the same to the companion of, did you know that? Or how does that do for you in that environment? So that's what is so vital to making sure we're engaging with them, not just at one point, but through the whole process and after fitting. When they come back for a follow-up, patients always say, I'm doing great because we have changed their life. But the companion can say, well, we're still struggling in these couple environments. So it's either it's reiteration of realistic expectation, or do we need to make an adjustment to the device? So having that input is so vital both ways.
Yeah, I saw this with my father-in-law, and my brother-in-law is a PhD nurse. He's a dean of a nursing school at a major university, FSU. Okay. And my father-in-law just got hearing aids. I helped him get them. And he did that. He was testing him at the dinner table. It was noisy. It was Thanksgiving dinner. It was noisy. And he did that. Hey, Pop, can you pass the mashed potatoes? And of course, Pop didn't hear him because Pop was at the other end of the table talking to me. And then I heard Steven say, it's a good thing he didn't pay full price for those because they don't work worth a damn. And I went, whoa, I heard that. I didn't hear the past the mashed potatoes part, but I heard that. And I went, whoa, time out. Do you understand how unfair that is? And I started to advocate for him. But let's be real, guys. How many patients do you think you have that have someone in their life that are going to advocate for them like that? See, if Steven would have been present during all those appointments, he would have had a much more realistic expectation. He would have known that Pop's word to scrim was 60% when there is a absolutely clear signal to noise ratio, and that's a realistic expectation. But instead, all he knew was these normally cost $7,000, so he should be able to hear through walls. He should be able to hear through it over a jet engine. Well, is that realistic? Heck no, but that's what we deal with. And then imagine 4 years later, when it's time to start thinking about something new, what do you think goes through that patient's mind? Because that happens for about the first 3-4 months of them getting fit, and then it just kind of dies off. What do you think happens 4 years later when it's time to start thinking about new technology, David? What do you think's going through their mind?
I'm not going through this again.
Yeah, I don't want to go through that with them again.
Yep.
And then what do they say to you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing fine.
I'm doing fine with what I got. I think I'll just stick with what I got for a while longer. So if you're hearing that in your office, I want you to be thinking about, has the companion been involved all along the way? And if they haven't, okay, learn from it and move on. Stacy, I see your hand just went up. Did you have something you wanted to
Yeah,
share?
I
Okay.
do, if I can get my mouse to work this morning. I think one of the most impactful experiences that I've had with a companion being present in um, HAE where the patient was already fit with hearing aids prior. I mean, they were married, I think 67 years, I think is what they told me. So they'd been together a long time.
Oh,
And I know, long, long time. These were not young people. But what happened was the provider had taken the patient into the booth. And so I had a chance to kind of have a conversation with a companion who wasn't really speaking up much. And I asked her, what was going on with her and her husband in the relationship with his hearing. And she started to cry in the chair. And she said, we've been married for 67 years, but I feel like I've lost my husband and I'm living alone. And that was like crushing. So when the patient came back in, I asked her permission to share that story with her husband, and he was really resistant to getting anything new. It was clear he wasn't hearing well when he checked in the front desk. It was clear he wasn't hearing well when we were doing discovery. And I asked if I could share that. And when I told him that, his wife, who he loved and had been married so long, felt alone, like she had lost her husband, one little tiny tear went down his cheek, and he's like, "Okay, I'll get them, honey." And that was a huge impact for me because when we love our the patient, whether they're our father or our companion or what have you, we oftentimes don't express how much it's affecting us. And so as providers, I think it's a responsibility we have to kind of help advocate not only for the patient but also for the companion and give them a chance to speak about how it's impacting them. And not having that person there, I know 100% that gentleman would not have gone forward with getting something that could help him better.
Sure.
and
That was
and
definitely
then
one of the most
imagine where,
impactful.
and how would that have impacted their relationship?
Well, she'd continue to live in one half of the house and he would continue to live in the other half of the house, and they'd go to bed lonely every night for the
Yeah,
last
they're
20 years of their
missing out
marriage.
on the fullness of a 67-year marriage.
Hmm. But as soon as he saw how it was really impacting her and she had the space to be open and honest about it, then he understood that it wasn't just all about him.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
he wasn't just doing it on purpose.
No. And he didn't realize how much he was missing out on either until she expressed it.
So, that's a big thing, guys. If you're kind of iffy about companion, I know during COVID we got away from working on that as much and focusing on that as much because of, all the constraints around COVID. But I really do believe it's time to get back to it. And it will open up your doing deeper discovery, just like Stacy was talking about. Beautiful segue into the next nugget, which is doing deeper discovery with patients. Assumptions and expectations will kill any relationship. Uh, David, can you think of any great relationships that you have that where you've had misaligned expectations and you guys just make a bunch of assumptions about each other?
Not great relationships at all. None.
I can't think of any.
No.
But I can think of almost every argument I've had with my beautiful wife of now going on 16 years, and almost every argument we've ever had has been because we had misaligned expectations. I was expecting this, she was expecting that, and then we ended up going like this. And then she's over here and I'm over here, and we end up yelling at each other. I've seen it happen too many times. And then we start assuming things about their intent to top it all off. And this happens to people that we love. So, the idea of doing deeper discovery with our patients is getting down to some of those more emotional issues, like what Stacy had the story Stacy just shared. Had she not gone there and asked that really tough question, I don't think that patient would have moved forward. And had the companion not been there, that couldn't have happened either. So it's both of these things have to go together. And if you sometimes find yourself in appointments going, God, I really want to ask this question, but it's a little uncomfortable. I would say this: get with your account manager. You can get with me and David afterwards. We'd be happy to work with you to come up with some ways to go about that and approach that. One way that I found works really well, if you have hesitancy about asking questions, is just ask their permission to ask the question. I do it all the time. And when you ask the permission, yet to have anyone say no. Say, listen, I want to ask you a question, but this is it's kind of a tough question. It might be a little bit sensitive. Is it okay if I ask you? They go, well, yeah, depend. At worst, they will say, depends what it is, but go ahead. At worst. But the majority of the time they say, yeah, sure, go ahead. What do you got? And then you ask the tough question, like, well, let me ask you this. What do you think was going through your client's mind when you answered the wrong, the story you just shared with me, you answered a completely different question than what they were asking you. What do you think was going through their mind about you when that happened? That's a tough question to ask, but boy, does that expose some need. Does that get them to start drawing the conclusion on their own? Like, do you think most patients sit at home going, I wonder what everyone else is thinking about my hearing loss? No. So, but you're asking them to process through that with you during the appointment. And during discovery, you're not trying to solve any problems. That comes later, but you're giving them the opportunity to start processing what's actually happening in their own life. David, do you think most patients like actually spend a lot of time thinking about things like that
No,
before they come see you?
not a bit. So that's why it's so important. And I obviously we all want to get better at every aspect of what we do for our living. But I think deep dive for me has become the biggest focal point, is getting to the root, finding some of that unfortunate pain that the patient is experiencing, uncomfortable things. And the only way to do that is to ask those questions, not to be obtrusive, to be helpful.
When you do a great job at deep discovery, what do you find at the end of the appointment? Happens a lot less.
It's a lot less objection,
Yeah,
a lot
that's
less
what I've seen.
kickback, a lot less, well, this and that. But yeah, it's because we've already answered those questions. We already discussed it before it got to that point.
Yep. Another nugget that we've seen be incredibly effective on driving the best outcomes and turning opportunities into success is utilization of a blank audiogram before you put them in the booth. David, I know you didn't always do this, but once you made the transition to doing this, what did you find?
Well, number one, I found that I had a lot better trust with the patient when it came to the explanation of the result. So here we have a blank audiogram, and we all should do this is, Mr. Patient, if we see a result that's all in that okay area, we're going to send you out the door. We're going to give you some advice on protecting the hearing you have, and we'll see you in a year or two. That's it. If you fall below that area of needs help now, then we need to start discussing today possible treatment plans. And then anything that falls into that gray area, what I call gray area, that question mark area, doesn't mean you can't be helped, but we're not sure how that success will be. But we're going to try. And at the end of that, when we go bring them into the booth, we bring them back out. Number one, the explanation of the test is much faster because they can all see where it's at. And they know we didn't move that end zone. We didn't move the goal line. We didn't move the finish.
Yeah, it's a lot more transparency when it comes to that. And when you have the companion next to you during the test, holding that blank audiogram and then looking at your screen, does it open up a little bit more conversation with them?
It does. I think it helps the patient or the companion to say, oh, now I see why they are struggling. They weren't just pretending.
They weren't doing it on purpose. It wasn't
Yep.
just selective hearing. There really is a problem.
Yes.
And I've seen companions go, oh wow.
Mhm.
I've been kind of yelling at him, and I thought he was doing it on purpose. So there really is something. Okay. So that to me has been a great thing that I've seen providers starting to do. And what I will say too is when you get to the point of explaining the audiogram, that once the test is done, boy, it cuts down on the time of that significantly when you've been very transparent on the front end of this is what we're looking for. And if you have any measurements that fall into this area, this is what it means. And then when you have, okay, now we're going to go through it. Oh, shoot, I have stuff that falls into that area. That means I need help. So what do we do now? Now we do a functional listening assessment. Okay. Because we want to see how you're going to function. And I want to assess how you're going to function with prescribed amplification in the real world. So that's going to be the next step in this process. And so I want you to think about, I mean, some people call it a demo, some people call it a trial. I would ask you to think about this from a language standpoint. What sounds better to a patient? I'm going to do a trial, I'm going to do a demo, a product demo, or I'm going to do a functional listening assessment. What sounds more salesy?
The first two.
I mean, when I go to the state fair and they have, what do they have all over the place at the state fair? Product demos. Is that what we're doing? Or are we assessing how they're going to function in the real world with prescribed amplification? So just something to think about there from a language standpoint, but the whole purpose of that functional listening assessment for the patient and the companion. I love Owen Wilson and his, like, just picture that nasally, wow, like that. Wow, like you're trying to create a wow factor with your functional listening assessment. It's the opportunity to stop talking about it and start showing them. David, when you've had tremendous functional listening assessment outcomes, what difference has that made in patients moving forward?
It's night and day. It's a big difference between explaining something and showing something. Let them experience it. Create that wow. We're re-engaging, we're flipping on, like I tell patients, we're flipping on a light switch. We're bringing back things that they have missed for so long. Give them the opportunity to experience it.
Listen, guys, I work with a lot of practices and some of them don't do this. And some of them will just talk about how the prescribed amplification is going to help the patient, and the patient nods along, and then they go home and think. And many of them don't do anything about it. Seeing and hearing is believing. So that's been another big thing that we've seen, is doing that functional listening assessment consistently with your patients will make a huge difference in outcomes. And this is the last question we have, is when it comes to making your recommendation for treatment. And this is for the chat, if you guys could. So when it comes to making your recommendation, what do you typically do? A, do a good, better, best. B, recommend the product that they're wearing during the functional listening assessment, make a strong recommendation there. C, use a lifestyle grid, which I think we've all seen those lifestyle grids with the pictures. Or D, base your recommendation on a predetermined budget. So you kind of assess their budget and you base your recommendation on that. Where do we fall on that scale? A, B, C, or D? B. Jorgen says B. Anybody else? All right. Got one person participating. That's good, Jorgen. Thank you. All right. So like David, you've done A and C, have you not?
Sure.
In the course of
I
your
think
career?
we all have. Yes.
And Jorgen, I agree with you because Stacy told you to. And that's a good answer.
Thanks, Stacy.
David, what did you find when you moved from doing good, better, best and a lifestyle grid to making a strong recommendation? What did you find as the difference with your outcomes?
Ultimately, I think what I found is just a better patient experience, a better patient outcome, less visits back, less adjustments. More importantly is the patient just comes in and they seem to be happy. Hey, what can I do? Nothing. Can I just get the hearing aids cleaned and serviced? Don't touch it. They're working well. Compared to when I did good, better, best or lifestyle grid, I think we underfit patients. I know I did, to the point of where we were relying more on their input than our professionalism and our knowledge of what is best for the patient.
When you say underfit patients, it really made me think about something as we were preparing for this. And I thought through so many instances I've been in offices and observing and participating during events. And I had these sidebar conversations with providers where they got devices. They were a competitive user, meaning they got devices from another practice and they came to see us. And how many times a provider has turned to me in a sidebar and said, this patient was way underfit. They should have been a premium device based on their lifestyle and this hearing loss. There's no way they should have been in an entry-level product. This is ridiculous. And of course, they did the right thing. They did an appropriate discovery. They did a functional listening assessment, and the patient ended up going with premium. But you have to ask yourself the question, when patients aren't coming back and they're going elsewhere, did we underfit them? Did we, because maybe we prejudged them, or we didn't think they were gonna go for a premium product because of the price? So if it happens to you where they're coming from somewhere else to you, and you have patients that are going elsewhere, there's probably some good reasons why. Maybe we've missed some of these things along the way. So what I would ask all of you to do is just sort of do a self-assessment and think about maybe some of these things that you want to work on. And then by all means, reach out to me directly. You can reach out to David, but certainly reach out to your account manager. We would be more than happy to do additional training with your team and working with your team. Certainly schedule an advanced workshop and have David be able to come in for 3 days and work with your team. This is what we're working on, and this is what we're all about, guys. It's about driving better outcomes, driving better connections. It's not about sell, sell, sell. It's about making this a better experience overall for your patients. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're out of time, but we sure appreciate all of you, and it's been our honor and our pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.